Good evening, good morning. How are we today? Oh, yes, I am live. Excellent. How you doing out there? Hopefully you can hear me. Please let me know if you can't. I'm just double checking all of my technical. Oh gosh. Okay, I am live. If you're joining me, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if my sound is okay. I am coming to you live from Melbourne today. I'm sitting on the floor, my laptop's on the bed. I'm staying with a friend of mine, so a little bit of a different surrounding this evening. So do let me know if you can hear me. I'm not using my earphones, which I normally do. So please let me know if the sound is okay. Just give me a thumbs up. If you're here, say hi. Let me know that you're here in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay, give me a hashtag replay. This is going to be a lot of content I'll be sharing with you today. Hey, Elif, but great to have you here. But I'm very happy to answer questions. I will be checking in the comments box as we go along. So at the end of each section, I'll take a breather and check in on your comments. So hello, Claire. How you doing? Lorraine, good to see you here. Welcome, welcome. All right, so we are here today for the craft of writing. This came about because I've taken a little bit of time off recently. When you have a lot of time for your head to spin around and just think about random things. And I've been thinking about the themes that have been coming up in my writing. But the thing I hadn't quite realised is there's a whole bunch of stuff I am looking for when I'm looking at people's writing, when I'm helping my clients, when I'm doing my own writing, and I hadn't necessarily verbalised them in the way that I'm going to today. So you're in for a treat. I haven't talked about these specific techniques that I am going to be sharing with you today. Which are all about the craft of writing and getting your copy to flow more, to bring more of you into your copy, and to make your copy more effective in reaching your ideal client. So, or your audience, not even necessarily your ideal client. Okay, so in case we've not met before, I'm Lynn Horde, the Joy Coach, Copy Queen, Alignment Genie, and I support soul-led businesswomen to elevate their message, their marketing, and their mindset so they can usher in the next level of their soul work. So I've been in business for about 8 or 9 years now, but this is my second career. I trained as a coach back in 2007, I think. But before then, I was a journalist. So I spent 20 years as a writer and editor. So that's why I can work with copy in the way that I can. And then I moved into actually running my own copywriting business. And now I use it as a business coach and copy consultant with my clients. So as I said, today we're here to talk about the craft of writing. And I'd be really interested to know if you wanted to put into the comments, when it comes to writing, what do you feel is your biggest challenge or struggle or thing that you get confused by? So, why are you here today? What is it that you're hoping to learn? So I'd love for you to put that in the comments if you're happy to do so. And I will keep, as I said, checking back in. I'm on a much smaller computer than I would be normally, so just double checking everything. Yep, good to go. All right, so just leave me comments if you've got questions as we go along. So the 3 things I wanted to talk about today with you. So the first one is creating simple ways to create more flow in your writing. The second thing is to talk about how to bring more you to your writing, and then the third thing is around simple techniques that can make your writing more effective. So that's what we're looking at today. I think I've got that right. Accessible, effective, and engaging. That is right. Just checking my notes. So we're going to be here. I had said we're going to be here for 70 minutes, which included some Q&A time, so I could come back and check your comments. For the first time in my life, I think I've overestimated that, so I don't expect us to be here that long today. If we are, I'll be a little bit surprised. But hey, we've got the time set aside, so if we need it, we'll use it. But just to say, we may finish a little early today. All right, so let's dive in. So the first thing we're talking about is 3 simple ways to create more flow in your writing. Now, when I got down to the detail of this, it wasn't just 3, it was 5. So I hope you've got a pen and paper ready. I'm going to keep this really simple. The idea behind this training was to give you like the simple technique, but of course I will give you a little bit of explanation around them as well. So one of the core things when it comes to creating flow in your writing is structure. Creating some structure in the piece that you are sharing with your audience. Now, the structure I'm going to share is quite simple, but it's really important. So we think about, flow as being really, flowy and like awesome, and it just all like gels. But generally, behind that flow is a structure. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this section. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about is when you're writing anything. So it doesn't matter if you're writing a blog, if you're writing your sales copy, if you're writing a post on social media, we always need to be beginning with the end in mind. Now, I'm sure you've heard that before, but take a moment and ask yourself the question, do you actually, before you start writing something out, think about what is the core takeaway or core action I want somebody to either receive or do before you write something. So give me a hands up if you do, and if you do, that's awesome. And so give me a thumbs up if you do, and if you don't, then it's something that I do highly recommend to really think about. Well, what is it that I actually want out of this piece? Now, little caveat, sometimes I'll actually start writing a blog and I'll get a third of the way through or 2/3 of the way through and go, what is your point here, Lynn? So sometimes I forget at the beginning to do that as well. But I know before that piece is finished and before I've sent it out, I know exactly what the core takeaway is for my audience, and I know exactly what my CTA is going to be, so my call to action. So I'm just going to check the comments in here. So who here does do that? Okay, great. So a couple comments. Hey, Iris, great to see you here. Yes, so Iris's challenge is how to get all the info into the email with clarity, humor, and authenticity. We'll be helping you with some of those things today. Elif, Lynn, I do lots of free writing, never sure if it is good. Elif, just to say, free writing is really awesome to find your voice and to figure out what it is you want to say. When you then go to share it with the world, structure is going to be really important in order to get your point across. So that's why this structure is really important in terms of creating flow, because we want to take the reader the reader on a journey, and so we need to know where we're taking them to. So that's why this point around it, we need to know where we're going to take them before we begin, is it really important. So that's one. Claire mentions my challenge is concise and structured. Yes, and you're not alone with that, Claire. You are definitely not alone. And whittling down is a real skill. So actually, just as a little offshoot, and this is how I roll, guys. I love answering your questions, so please keep popping them in. I will bring it back to what we're talking about right now. But Claire's comment is actually really important because, and actually it relates with Elif's, because when we do free writing, when we sit down and we write and we allow ourselves to flow, so we think about that idea of, I'm just going to let it come out of me, that's the creative process. That is part 1 of your writing experience. As you get more experience and more practice, absolutely, you can end up joining them together. But oftentimes what we need to do is go, okay, I'm just going to get it all out on paper, whether you're brainstorming some ideas for, a email campaign, or you are thinking about, a blog that you're going to write. Sometimes that's a really great idea. Just get everything out on paper and then whittle it down into a structure. So coming back to the structure we were talking about. So the first thing I've shared with you is we need to begin with the end in mind. So what is the key takeaway that you want them to know before you start writing? And the reason we need to know that is because we need our ideas to build to that final takeaway. So this is often what I see is not happening in blogs, or that's the piece where your audience can get stuck. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But we want our ideas to build on each other. So from the very beginning, and it's like, I think about it like I was trying to figure out the best analogy. It could be like a set of stairs. It could be a ladder. So you can't get to the 10th step without first stepping on the first step. Our ideas need to build the same way to the crescendo of our takeaway. So that's often what I see missing. So when you look at a paragraph, so when you've written your first paragraph, and often it might be the idea or the inspiration for the blog that you're writing today, as an example. So once you have got that in place, you then want to go, well, what's the next natural idea? What's the next sequence of ideas I need to be sharing in order to build to where I know I'm going in the end? So let me know if this is making sense, or if you have questions about it, and I'll keep going and come back to your questions. So that's the other key point here. So if we think about it like, we will think about it like a ladder, because no, stairs is definitely better. Let's think about it like some stairs. Okay, so at the top of the stairs is our crescendo. That's the takeaway that we want our clients to have. But when they come to us, they start on the first step. So what is that first idea that I need to introduce them to? And then you've given them that one. You're like, okay, what's the next one? So there's the next idea. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see how they join together. And then you're like, what's the next idea I need to introduce them to? And that goes there. And as you can see, all the way up to our final crescendo point here, we're like, oh, the takeaway, the solution, the idea. You get it. So this is really important. Now, we come to the third piece of this wonderful structure. The basic building blocks of this is the idea. I call it the one concept rule. And I used to call it a principle, but honestly, it is a golden rule, because no matter if you're writing a sentence, if you're writing a paragraph, every sentence and every paragraph needs to deal with one idea or one concept. And this is for people who feel like they're writing a lot and it's whittling down, this is what you're looking for. You're looking to read. So once you've written everything out, you want to go back and look at your sentence and go, what idea is that dealing with? And is it dealing with only one idea? It's really important, because this is how we deliver clarity and simplicity in our writing. And these are crucial if we want to establish flow, if we want to make it easy for our reader to engage and find our copy accessible. So is this making sense? Give me thumbs up. Any questions, please feel free to let me know. And as I said, I'll come back and answer them. So we're talking about structure. So this is actually how we create flow, is by having this structure in our writing. So we want to think about our ideas always building on top of each other, one idea at a time. So one idea, then the natural next idea, then the next idea, all the way up to our crescendo, our takeaway idea that we want somebody to grasp. That's the point of whatever we're writing about today. So hopefully, yep, that's making sense. So this is always what I'm looking for. It's always what I'm picking apart. When I read like a paragraph, I'm like, wow, there are so many ideas in there. I'm like, whoa, okay, let's unravel this and look at it from the idea, like what concepts are we trying to get across from this one paragraph? And then you break it down. Okay, so what is this sentence all about? Now, I know that might sound really, maybe it sounds overwhelming. Maybe it's like, oh God, the detail. Let me know. Like, first of all, how is that resonating with you at the minute? How is that landing? But it's a skill, guys. So even if you don't have it right now, that's totally okay, because this is a skill that you can develop. and it's going to have an incredible impact on your writing and the accessibility of your writing. So the fourth piece on here, so the first piece was about beginning at the end. This is in the section we're talking about here around creating flow in your writing. So the first thing was about beginning with the end in mind. The second thing was making sure each paragraph is building on each other. So each of your paragraphs is building on each other towards the key takeaway you would like your audience to take away. And the third one is to remember the one idea rule. So everything is only dealing with one idea. And the fourth thing that we want to talk about here is remembering that although you are the author, you are the writer, ultimately we also need to remember that somebody is reading this. So when I'm looking at copy with the clients that I'm working with, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm the reader, what am I taking away from this? And we need to hop into the shoes of our reader sometimes and actually go, okay, so are my ideas in sequential sequence? Like, does that make sense? Or have I done a bunny hop and I've missed something in the middle? And we need to really get into the shoes of our reader and go, okay, so does that make sense to them? And look, I'm not going to say sometimes that's really hard because we're so close to our copy. I know I've done it with sales pages and I'm like, oh, but that was an awesome piece of writing. And then I'd be like, but then I'm actually able to step outside of myself and become my reader and go, but is that actually pertinent to what you're trying to help them understand? And there are times when I have to say, no. I say it that way because it means I have to take it out. So Claire, so that's something to think about for yourself. When you've put everything in there, it's about stepping away from the copy, coming back to it and actually looking at it and going, okay, is this relevant to the thing I'm trying to share, teach, have them take away, get the aha? And you just go paragraph by paragraph. Is that also relevant? The great news is, guys, if it's not relevant, it's usually another blog. I can't tell you the number of times I'll sit there with my client and go, yeah, we need to remove that, but don't worry, you can actually write all about that in another blog. And they're like, awesome, that solves my content for the next week. So don't worry if you've written too much, and don't be saddened or overwhelmed by the editing process, because often the stuff you remove you can then go and use elsewhere, make it into another blog or a post or something. All right, I'm just going to check back. Someone just give me a thumbs up, let me know you're all still here. I don't think there are any more questions at this point. No, and everybody can hear me okay, I guess. Yeah, so someone just put in a thumbs up just so I know that you can still hear me and we're all okay, please. All right. Anyone? Bueller? No? Okay. I'm hoping you guys can still hear me. Okay, I'll keep going. All right. So we've been talking about begin with the end in mind, the one concept rule, so always containing your sentences and your paragraphs to one concept. And the third one was the ideas staircase. So making sure your ideas are always building one on top of the other so that there are no gaps in your writing. So sometimes I'll read something and there's like a leap in ideas. I can see that there's a gap, and so I will suggest to my my client or whoever I'm working with is like, so what goes in here? So once we've shared this with them, what's the next thing they need to know before we get to that? So just joining the dots, that's actually what we're trying to do for our audience and our readers. We're helping them join the dots between our ideas. So that's often a way I like to think about it. So we've talked about, so the fourth thing was we just talked about was getting into your reader's shoes when you're doing the editing process. And then the other little secret technique that works incredibly well to help you create copy that flows is something called linking words or linking sentences. So if you've got a paragraph, and let's say it's talking about, you're talking about children, in some way. Children have a wonderful capacity for joy. Okay, so say that's your paragraphs about that idea. You know, children have a wonderful capacity for joy. The next paragraph would start something like, however, when children get stressed, they can experience deep sadness and frustration. Really random example. But what I wanted to focus on there is the however. So, however is a linking word which helps you join the dots between your concepts. So this is important because it allows that continuity. It helps people understand the connection. So it can be however or but, you know, they're linking words, but you can also have entire sentences that help somebody see how the idea above, in the paragraph above, the idea relates to the idea below. And this is again important because then it's really easy for your audience, your reader, to follow along with your ideas. I mean, have a think about it for a second. You've probably had that experience before where you've read something and you're like, oh, I'm not sure what's happening there. Like, how did he go from there to there? Yeah, I'm looking at my hand like it's a book. That's why I'm reading my book hand at the minute. So, and I'm sure you've had that experience, and it creates confusion in the reader. And of course, when people get confused, what do? They either struggle to try and make it to the end, but the thing they probably take away is the struggle with that. I've certainly had that experience. Or they stop trying to read at all. So that's why flow is really important, because we want to avoid that experience where our reader actually goes, oh, I'm lost, or I'm confused. And through the techniques that I've shared so far, they're really awesome ways to support you to create that ease with that your reader can then engage with your writing. All right, so we're coming to the end of this section, but I wanted to give you a little bonus information around verbal presentations. One of the things I talk about a lot with clients, especially when I'm helping them with things like webinars or talks, is helping them understand how to put in verbal signposts. Now, you'll see me have done quite a few already today. So because obviously we're talking verbally, I know you're taking it in auditorily, you know, and there's no visual for you to follow. So I'm giving you verbal signposts about where we are in today's presentation. So I've said we're doing 3 things. I've talked about in the first thing, you know, we're talking about 4 different concepts, and I've gone, okay, we're in here, we're doing this one concept. So I've done that really quickly. But this is how we help somebody to come along with us when we're doing verbal presentations, is by verbally signposting, so giving them a marker of where we are in that presentation. And it just makes people actually feel at ease, because like, oh yeah, I get it. Okay, I know where we are. Because as we know, uncertainty can create tension. So the verbal signposting allows somebody to actually it's very subtle, but it really supports somebody to be present and listen to what it is that you are sharing in your presentation, talk, or whatever it is. So I just wanted to share that little bonus with you today. It's not technically the craft of writing. You don't necessarily need that in your when you're doing writing, but most of my clients are doing some form of speaking as well, and it's really important when they're doing that. So I'm just going to take a breath and go back and check in on Karen. Do you know Karen? So beautiful. Karen said, linking words or linking sentences, do you mean segues? And yes, you can also call them segues. Karen and I have a good joke around linking words and linking sentences. Thank you, Iris. Great. Thanks for everyone for letting me know that you can hear me. I think it's just a bit slow on coming through here, so I don't see it straight away. All right. Oh, that's awesome. So Farah said she started having 1 objective per blog. That's fantastic. Great. All right. Remembering, guys, if you have any questions, if I don't answer them directly today, I'll check back and answer them after or tomorrow. All right, so we've been talking about the first piece of the puzzle today, which was around creating flow in your writing. And that's all about the structure, the underlying simple structure that allows you to support your reader to flow through your copy. And we do that through building our ideas one on top of each other in like a sequential fashion. So we're joining the dots for them all the way to the takeaway or the key thing or the solution we want to share. And we further support them by only having one concept per paragraph, so that so each paragraph is a concept and they build on each other. And we talked about linking words or sentences so that people, it's like you're weaving. It's like you weave. It's kind of like how I see it in my head when I look at copy, or particularly when I'm also writing now. You know, I've written something, I'm like, oh, I can see the threads running through because of those linking sentences. So that's what they do to help support that flow. All right, so I'm just going to take a sip of water. 8:26. See, I said we wouldn't need that the 70 minutes, but as usual, I have a lot to say about things, so it's all good though. We've got time. All right, so the second thing we're going to talk about today is how to make your writing pop with personality. So in terms of, we are doing a lot of like business writing. So we are writing blogs, we're writing promotional posts, we're writing education posts. You might be writing talks or presentations or podcasts, all of the things that we could be writing for our business. Now, most of the women I work with are in business for themselves, and they're either working solo right now, or they've got a team member or a small team, but they are essentially the face and the voice of their brand. So that's why it's important that your writing actually is filled with your personality, because having our personality, so developing our voice in our writing, is one of the ways that we stand out from the crowd, from the industry, is by being unique in the way that we talk about the things that we do. Because remembering that we are often talking about a lot of things that other people are talking about in our industry, particularly in the coaching field, often the subject matter a lot of the time can be very similar. So what makes you stand apart is how you talk about it and the voice that you use when you are talking about your topics and your subject matter. So I talk about this as like we're adding color to our writing. So obviously not actual color, but like interest and aliveness and intrigue. So this is kind of what I'm talking about when we're adding our personality. One of the biggest blocks we have to putting more personality into our work or our writing are twofold. So one, it's because we have been taught for so long not to put ourselves in our writing. From school to higher education institutions to the workplace, we've been taught to write and do not. I remember an old boss of mine saying this to me. He's like, do not put any of you in your writing, Lynn. It's about facts. Not you, it's about facts. So, and in the journalism world, like I get it. Like, it is a very factual based industry. That's what it is about, reporting the facts. But even in the workplace, when you've written reports before, like it's not about you, it's about the subject matter and the facts. So we have a lot of unlearning to do in order to be able to bring our own personality and our voice into our writing. So I wanted to share that with you so you know it can take time, and that's perfectly okay. It's okay to, take time and develop your voice. So that's what we're talking about. Bringing personality into your writing is about developing your unique voice in the written word. And it's not just the written word, of course, it's how you speak about the topics that you choose all the time. So the first thing around this is learning to write like you speak. This would be my number one key thing to share. So if we write like we speak, you might use swear words, you might use contractions a lot, you might use made up words, you might have your own unique phraseology, you might speak like a rapper on occasion or throw out your accents, whatever it might be. And the reason we want to do this is because through our writing in business, we're looking to develop that know, like, and trust factor. We're looking to develop connection with our readers and with our audience. And if they go off and read something that you've written and it's quite formal, and they see you in a video and it's quite, you're jocular and you're funny, and there might not be that kind of a divide, but it is jarring for people if how they read you, how they hear you is not the same, and it causes tension, it causes an internal distrust. So this is one of the reasons we really want to develop our own unique voice in our writing and when we're sharing on certain topics. So as I said, swear words, contractions, made up words. Like I have used like gimme and gonna and how's about it and how's that, because I'm Australian, so I bring in some of my jocular Australian language, and I pepper that throughout my writing. I literally will write it like I would have said it to a friend. So I do recommend that a lot. I'm just going to turn a light on. I've just seen that the sun's set and you can't see me. Hold 1 second. Hold that thought. Write any questions you have in the comments. Ha! You probably saw my posy on the chair then. That's better. You can see me again. Hurrah! Okay. So the first thing here around bringing your personality into your copy is around writing like you speak. The second thing is around being authentic in your view. This isn't always easy. This takes time to develop because it's all actually about how we feel internally about speaking our voice, sharing our opinions, standing our ground, and really talking about the things that matter to us in public, out in the world. It's also about sharing your experiences, your own personal take on what it is that you're talking about. These things are also really important because if we're trying to build that connection, and as soul-led business women, we're here to be authentic. We're here to be the leaders of how to do business in this authentic way. And it's not always easy, for sure, but this is part of our marketing, is part of our writing, is sharing our own experiences, our own opinions, and how we differ. So that concept of don't be it's not don't be vanilla, but it's like put your flag in the sand is how I prefer to talk about it, and say this is what I stand for. So sharing those kind of things out in the world is something to work towards. I'm not saying right now go out there and scare the shit out of yourself and put out a post and then go and hide away for months on end because you have a serious vulnerability hangover. We don't want to do that to ourselves. So we incrementally want to just share a little bit more of ourselves, a little bit more about our story, a little bit more about our own views, so that we are sharing the true authenticity of who we are and how we see the world. Because as a side note, that is also why people will be attracted to you. That is what draws them in, because they can feel that authenticity when you are sharing. So important piece there around bringing that personality. It's not just about fancy language. That's not what I'm talking about at all. It's about your unique voice, your unique view on the world. And putting your flag in the sand as well. So I'm just going to check the questions. Don't be beige. That's it, Iris. And look, and I thought about this earlier. There's no judgment on where anybody is right now. So I still have a long way to go before I'm out there swinging from the rooftops and sharing my absolute deepest beliefs out in the world. I share a lot of stuff with my community, but there are still, thresholds that I still have thresholds, and that's okay. Like, it's all part of the journey as we grow, stronger in ourselves and step more into our power, and we go out there and we are more bold with our message. So, so be bold, not beige. That's the good takeaway. Iris, love that. Ah, so that's such a good point. Thank you. Iris just said, I remember being taught to write in the passive rather than active, so no eyes, keep it impersonal. So exactly, that's a perfect example of when we were, at school, is to keep it away from ourselves. It's not about us, it's about the facts or the thing that you are writing about. So another way that we're like, no, don't talk about yourself. So well done. Thank you for sharing that, Iris. All right, so we're talking about how to make your writing pop with personality. So we've talked about write like you speak. Be authentic in terms of sharing, your views, your voice, your experience, your feelings, and be as bold as you can be today. Next week you could be bolder, and I'm sure from a year now you'll be bolder then. And there's no pressure to be bold, by the way. It's more about discerning what it is that you want to say and going out there and sharing that. So, and that's just a work in progress for us all. So that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of how to make your writing pop with personality. And if you are, because you can be on, there's quite a spectrum with where people can be in terms of bringing their voice into their writing. So we've got this end where we're just, someone's just come out of academic writing and they're like, write like I speak, like, what do you mean? Like, they're probably quite confused. And you'll have somebody at this end who, it's just natural for them now to write like they speak, and it could be like somewhere in the middle. And a really good technique to actually help you is free writing, which Elif mentioned in the beginning. And the purpose of this free writing is not for anybody else to see it, but for you to just go for broke on a piece of paper about a certain topic and really share your, boldest thoughts, opinions, feelings about it. And it's not that you have to go out into public and do that, but what that does is actually just internally give you a stretch, because you're actually voicing what's inside you somewhere. Even if it's not in public, it's on a piece of paper, it's not inside you, it is out somewhere. So that allows you internally just to stretch into a further ability to have a more powerful voice. So I do recommend free writing if that's something that interests you. And I have a resource that I created years ago called how to make your writing pop with personality, funny enough. So if you would like that, drop me a DM or just put below, yes, I would like the resource. So just type in, yes, I would like the resource, and I will get that over to you on a DM in the next few days. I found it today and I was like, oh, I'll see if anybody would like that. Okay, so lastly on this writing, making your writing pop with personality is I wanted to talk about relevance. So there's a lot of talk out there about sharing stories, and we all know that sharing stories in business is brilliant. Like, it's a really good thing to be able to do, and it also helps people because our brain is wired to receive stories and storytelling. So when we read a story, it actually does help us engage more. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with the stories was relevance. So this is the thing that I often talk about a lot everywhere, because relevance is really important. So if you might have a story and you're like, well, how is that relevant? Or that's the key, is to figure out, how is this relevant to my reader? So for instance, I helped my uncle the other day figure out some parts that he needed to buy on the internet. And we sat there and we were confused, and then we zoomed out, we had a high level view of the diagnostics, and then when I did that I was like, oh yeah, you need this and this. And then he looked at me and he's like, you should use this as a business story. And I could, because it's about being able to zoom out to see the missing pieces, which is something I would talk about like in business. So, okay, so sometimes, you know, you're stuck in the weeds, in the detail, you need to zoom out in order to be able to see where are the pieces not joining up, what am I missing? And then you can go back in and actually fill in the blanks and fill in those holes. So that story I can make relevant to my reader because of the principle or the concept that crosses over both things. So that's what I did with my uncle, and that's what I talk about with my clients. So if you're looking for stories or you've got one and you're like, oh, but like, how do I use this? The question to ask yourself is, how is this relevant to my reader? Or how is this relevant to my audience? Best word ever if you're like, and the same when you've got a lot of copy, you can go, okay, is this relevant or is this pertinent to the outcome I'm trying to help them understand? And if it is, leave it in. If it isn't, get that red pen and scrub it out. That's not what we do anymore. I know we're on the computer deleting things, but you get the idea. All right, so that's how to make your writing pop with personality. Write like you speak, be authentic, be bold, not beige, and share stories that are relevant to your audience. So that's that section. Look at me signposting for you guys. That was the end of section 2. All right, so I'm just checking. Resource. Great. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that, Karen. Karen's written a book and she started it by using free writing and then picking out the gems. Fantastic. And then we've got Iris. Billy Connolly hates beige. I'm sure there's a skit in there somewhere. Okay, brilliant. So Iris, Lorraine and Claire, I will get that resource over to you in the within the week. I'll say that. Brilliant. All right, so hilarious. I'm totally going to fill the time. That's awesome. Okay, I just have a little chuckle to myself. So next we're moving into the 3 principles that will make your writing more effective. Now, everything that we have already talked about will make your writing more effective, more engaging, and more accessible. So it'll be accessible because you're when everything is joined up and you've created flow, it is more accessible. When you bring more of you and more of, you know, how your more authenticity in your voice, it's more effective because you're easily creating that know, like, and trust with your audience. And you know, when you bring in your personality, of course, it's more engaging because you're actually bringing your personality. That's what people want. They don't want just blah 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 blah. They want to actually see and know who you are. So when it comes to the 3 principles that make your writing more effective, as I said, all of the stuff will support that, but there are 3 further things just to think about. So one of them is to be clear over clever. Now I know you'll have heard this before, but it is always worth reiterating because the amount of times where I have read something and I'm like, I'm not sure what you're trying to say here, because they've tried to overcomplicate it, they've tried to make it clever, and I fall into the cleverness trap, especially when it comes to naming things. So I know what that feels like. You're like, oh no, it's really sexy, this is great. But if it creates confusion for our audience or our reader, then we need to let it go. So clarity over cleverness every single time. Because if someone can't understand, so if there's no clarity because of the cleverness, then we're not going to get the response or the action taking or the engagement that we're looking for, because our audience is more confused than they are engaged. So something to think about. Doesn't need to be snazzy, it just needs to be clear. So that's the first thing that's the first principle around making your writing more effective, engaging, and accessible. Now, the second one, I should say, is about really bringing in conversational writing. I always talk about when you are writing anything that you are taking your audience on a journey. So, harking back to that's why we are building our ideas one on top of the other, because we're going on a journey. I literally think about it like a point to point journey. So they've started over there somewhere. I want them to end up over here somewhere. And I'm like, okay, what are the ideas? What are the points along the way I need them to stop at in order to get where we're going? But one of the ways we can do that is by having a conversation. And in writing, this can be challenging because the idea of conversational writing is more casual. It is more casual than formal, just like, we're having a chat here right now. Or we would be if we were on Zoom instead of a live. But conversational writing, so I actually sit down and think about it like I'm having a conversation with my audience when I'm sitting down to write. Now, of course, we've got structures, and writing does require some format, but it's that idea of putting in questions into your writing, having a pause and going, yeah, what do you think about that? Giving your reader a moment like you would if you were in conversation. Now, you might be asking right now, well, does that look much different to what I already write? And it probably doesn't. It's just sitting that with your mindset. So when you are sitting down to write, just thinking about that conversation. And mostly the change when you are using conversational writing is you'll probably throw in a few more questions, like you would, like, yeah, does that make sense? Or not that you would necessarily write that, but I do lots of little questions just at the end, like, what do you think? Or how does that sound? Or what do you think? Should we give it a go? I will write those kinds of things in my copy because I am making it conversational to engage my audience, to make them feel like, we are together. I am writing for them. So this conversational style of copy is really important, especially, as I say, with all of the things that we've talked about. We're wanting to stand out from the crowd. We're wanting to build that connection with our audience. So conversational writing is it's subtle way of really building that connection. I'm actually sitting here realizing it's incredibly subtle when you use conversational writing, because it is just like having that conversation with someone. Yes. I think I'm having a moment just realizing, wow, it really is subtle. So something I really do recommend to create that more engaging, accessible writing. And then the last one is actually more of a mindset. It's a mindset principle. When it comes to copy, one of the things that it is a craft. Writing is a craft, but it is a skill you can absolutely learn. And so one of the things that I've always talked about with my clients over time is the commitment to good enough. So committing to progress over perfection. Amazing writing, so you becoming an amazing writer, does not happen sitting in your room thinking about words in your head. It comes from actually expressing those words out into the world, getting feedback, seeing how it lands, really looking in, because that's why you're writing. Yes, we write for ourselves, but we're also writing for a purpose, which is around supporting our business to grow, to bring in new clients, to share our offers, all of those reasons. But we won't know how our writing lands unless we actually have it out there in the world. And writing doesn't need to be perfect to work. That'll be my if you could take a key takeaway from this one, writing does not have to be perfect in order for it to work. One more time. Writing does not have to be perfect in order for it to work. I see people get derailed by perfectionism so often. Like, they won't put out an offer. They won't put the website up they won't put the page up on their website because they are, so afraid of it being wrong, of not getting it right, of the words, and looking silly or foolish. But honestly, if you stick with those principles of clear over clever, conversational writing, be yourself, and commit to it being good enough, so progress over perfection, you will step by step make your way to becoming an incredible writer, and you will even perhaps enjoy the process. I'll be really curious to know that, actually. So those who are still watching, do you actually enjoy writing? So give me a thumbs up if you do, thumbs down if you don't. I'm just curious, actually. Either way, it doesn't matter. I'd just love to know. Okay. All right, so that was the third section. So we're talking about 3 principles that will make your writing more effective, engaging, and accessible. So the first one was clear over clever every time. That was the first one. The second one is conversational writing. So really thinking about when you sit down, you are writing to that one person and speaking and writing like you speak. And then the third one is committing to the craft of writing through progress over perfection. So writing something, getting out there, writing something, refining it, getting it out there. And lastly, of course, I really would encourage you to play with your writing. So I know right now you might be like, oh God, Lynn, the idea of even sitting down to write, that's not playful for me at all. And we really do want to we want to work towards bringing in that experience of joy when we are writing our copy. So this isn't necessarily a craft. This isn't the craft of writing, but it is a really essential piece to the energy of your writing. So how you feel when you write, the words that you do are received by your audience. So the more uplifted, the more higher your energy is when you write it, the more it's going to be received in that way, which when we talk about client attraction is leaving you streets ahead of where someone who is just writing it formulaically might be. So really important to think about that. What could you do to bring more joy into your writing? For me, I just sit and kind of think about what is it I would like to express from my heart. So that's something that I talk about with my clients a lot. Like, what does your heart want to say? Because for me, that's where the joy comes from. And so that's actually one of the modules in A Message That Matters, because it's so essential to the core practice of creating, writing that is joyful for you, particularly. So have a think about that. Just as an aside, we've talked about a lot of technique today, but in terms of energy, how could you create an experience for yourself where writing is joyful? Hey, how about that? Great. All right, Claire Baker, thumbs down. And Claire, tell me what is it? What happens when you sit down to write? I'd love to hear what makes it a thumbs down experience. Oh, yay, Iris enjoys writing. Karen, I've got your free resource, thank you. I will send that to you. Iris, is it best to write to one person rather than everyone? Yes, that's right. So that's the idea for me behind conversational writing, is that you are just writing to that one person. You can have an avatar or an ideal client. I often just think about the Joy Jam Collective, so my private group where we are today. I often think about them. I'm like, oh yeah, and I think about what do I want to share with them today, with you guys today. So that's kind of how I do it as well. But yes, the answer to that is yes, Iris. One person is better than everyone. Claire, great. I might do another live on that, Claire. So if I do, I will tag you, because so Claire said when she sits down to write, my mind goes blank. And Claire, just to let you know, that's more of an internal issue, so which is manifesting as an external confusion or mind blank, as I call it. It's your subconscious trying to keep you safe. So recommend having a look into, like, how does that serve you? How does that mind blank serve you? And just dive in a little bit to, like, what's underneath the surface for that one. Yes. Oh, great, Claire. Your second comment makes me confirms what I felt. That there's an internal issue around visibility using your voice. So yes, definitely recommend looking into that. Like, so what's going on underneath the surface there for you? All right, so I'm going to do a little recap for everybody today. Look at that, 8:55 on the money, Horty, on the money. All right, so today we've been here talking about the craft of writing. First off, we talked about, I'll just remind myself because I can't necessarily hold everything in my head. The first thing we talked about were 3 simple ways to create more flow in your writing. I actually gave you 5. So the first one was begin with the end in mind. The second one was the staircase, the ideas staircase principle. So joining the dots with your ideas all the way to your final takeaway. And the third one was the one concept rule. So the golden rule of only one idea or one concept. So one idea per sentence and one concept per paragraph, so that it stays tidy and tight. I talked about linking sentences, so using linking sentences to create flow, and putting yourself in your reader's shoes. So once you've done the creative process of getting everything out, donning your editor's hat, sitting in your reader's shoes and going, does that make sense? Is it pertinent or relevant to what I want them to take away? If it is, leave it in. If it isn't, hoik it out and put it in another blog post. Okay, and the bonus point there was around verbal signposting. So you've seen me do it many times a day. So verbal signposting when you're doing verbal presentations. So the second thing we talked about was how to make your writing pop with personality. And the key takeaways for that were to write like you speak. So using swear words, contractions, made up words, your own phraseology, all of that kind of stuff. The second thing was around being authentic, so sharing your views, sharing your unique voice, so developing that unique voice, and sharing your feelings. Be bold, not beige, to whatever capacity you can right now. And then the bonus point for that one was around sharing stories. We all know how powerful they are, but making them relevant to your audience. So sharing stories, but making them relevant to your audience. And then the third section we talked about was the 3 principles to make your writing more effective, engaging, and accessible. And that first one was being clear over clever. So clarity over cleverness every time. Conversational writing. So Iris, this is that speaking to one person, dropping the occasional question in there so that you're eliciting engagement, but also that's what we do in a conversation. We often drop in questions. And then the third one for this section was around really committing to progress over perfection. You know, recognizing that writing is a craft and it takes time and commitment and dedication to make it, you know, so that you are like you enjoy writing and it has the impact in the world and on your audience that you want. And that final bonus piece was considering what is it that would enable you to have a joyful experience when you are writing. Now, sure, that might be a long way right now. You might feel like, Jesus, Len, that's impossible. I promise you that it is, and there might certainly be things that you need to work through first and some practical things you need to put in place, but just begin to ponder the question and have the intention of creating an experience for yourself where your writing is joyful. So I'm just going to go back and see if you have any more questions for me. Not today, not yet. Okay. So if you do write them in now, if not, if you have another question later, you can certainly, come back and drop it in, tag me, and I will come back and answer any questions that you have. And we've covered a lot of stuff today. These are all of the kinds of things that I support my clients with, both my one-to-one and inside my group program, A Message That Matters. If you would like some support with this, I'm opening up some slots with anything to do with your writing. I'm opening up some slots next week for my message power up call. I was about to call it a Message That Matters call. My message power up call. So this is a 45-minute call where we actually look at like what is getting in the way of you having that experience with your writing, where it flows, where you know what your content is, where it becomes easy for you. So that's one of the things that we would do on that call, is actually look at what's in the way. I would share some ideas for what can you do, and also I have a really good sense now for what's actually getting in the way, because it's not usually what we think is in the way. So if you would like to have one of those calls with me, they are complimentary. If you want to find out about working with me further after the fact, we can talk about that then. But this call is 45 minutes for you to discover like what is really going on with my writing process. What can I do to really ramp up my own experience and have that experience of flow in my writing, so I can have greater engagement with my audience and with my readers. So I'll send me a DM if you're interested in taking up on one of those calls. I've only got about 4 left this year. So those free calls, there's only about 4 left this year. If you'd like to have one of them with me, as I said, they're free. Drop me a DM, or I will put a link in the comments below as well. So, and if you have any other questions, just send me a DM or an email. Very happy to hear from you. Okay, you are very welcome, Iris. Brilliantly, and thank you. You're welcome. You are welcome, Karen. Thanks for coming. Claire, I have done a lot of mindset work as a math scientist. I feel the blocks I have never really written. It's the what and how of Claire, from Claire. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, Claire, that's good. Well, I will send you that resource, and I'm curious about that. I'll send you a DM just to find out some more information about that, to see if I have another free resource I can share with you. So thank you for all of your wonderful comments. Oh, thank you, Karen. Karen has worked with me for many years. So she says the value I give is phenomenal, and the 45-minute offer, it's life-changing. Bless you. Thank you. You're welcome, Lorraine. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. If you have any other questions, oh, brilliant, Claire. I'll send you a DM, and we'll have a chat and see what's happening with you when you're writing. So thank you, everyone, so much for coming. It's always a joy to be here with you. I hope some of this has been useful, and you'll go away and actually use it in your writing. So I'm in here every couple of weeks with the training, so keep an eye out for those. And if there's anything you would like me to do a training on, please send me a DM or an email and let me know. I'm a responder. I love to actually share things that are pertinent and relevant for you. So let me know if there's any specific topics you'd love me to talk on. Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day. And thank you for spending your time with me this evening and this morning for you. All right. Have a wonderful day, my friends. Take care. Bye for now.